Welcome to our Stories for Kids channel for best learning stories. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Ella who loved to read fairy tales. She dreamed of meeting a fairy who would grant her wishes and make her happy. She often wished for a fairy to appear before her and take her to a magical land. One day, as she was reading a book in her room, she heard a soft voice say, "Hello, Ella. I am your fairy. I have come to grant you 3 wishes. What do you want?" Ella was overjoyed and jumped up from her bed. She looked around and saw a tiny figure with wings and a wand standing on her bookshelf. She couldn't believe her eyes. She ran towards the fairy and hugged her. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she exclaimed. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I have so many wishes. Can you take me to a magical land where I can meet princes and princesses and talking animals and have adventures?" The fairy smiled and said, "Of course, my dear. That is your first wish. Hold my hand and close your eyes. We will go to the land of fairy tales." Ella did as she was told and felt a gust of wind blow around her. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a beautiful forest with colorful flowers and trees. She saw a castle in the distance and heard birds singing and animals chattering. "Wow, this is amazing," she said. "Where are we?" The fairy said, "This is the land of fairy tales. Here you can meet any character from any story you like. You can also create your own stories and make them come true. You have 2 more wishes left. What do you want to do next?" Ella thought for a moment and said, "I want to meet Cinderella. She is my favorite princess. Can you take me to her?" The fairy nodded and said, "That is your second wish. Follow me." The fairy flew ahead and Ella followed her. They reached the castle and entered through a secret door. They walked through the corridors and reached a large ballroom where a grand party was going on. Ella saw many people dancing and laughing. She saw Cinderella in a beautiful blue dress and glass slippers. She saw the prince dancing with her and looking at her with love. Ella felt a surge of happiness and ran toward Cinderella. She wanted to talk to her and tell her how much she admired her. But as she approached Cinderella, she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. She saw Cinderella's stepsisters standing nearby, looking at Cinderella with envy and hatred. They were whispering to each other and plotting to ruin Cinderella's happiness. Ella felt a pang of sadness and fear. She realized that Cinderella's life was not as perfect as she had imagined. She remembered how Cinderella had suffered at the hands of her cruel stepmother and stepsisters before meeting the fairy. She wondered if Cinderella was truly happy or if she was still afraid of losing everything. She turned to the fairy and asked, "Is this how it really happened? Did Cinderella's stepsisters try to harm her even after she married the prince?" The fairy nodded and said, "Yes, my dear. This is the truth behind the fairy tale. Cinderella's life was not easy. She had to face many challenges and dangers before finding her true love and happiness." Ella felt confused and disappointed. She asked, "But why? Why did they hate her so much? Why couldn't they be happy for her?" The fairy said, "Because they were selfish and greedy. They wanted everything for themselves and nothing for others. They did not know how to love or be loved." Ella said, "That's terrible. How can anyone be so mean? How can anyone live without love?" The fairy said, "That's a good question, my dear. Love is the most powerful magic in the world. It can make anyone happy and overcome any obstacle. But some people are afraid of love or don't believe in it. They think that love is weak or foolish or impossible." Ella said, "That's sad. I don't want to be like them. I want to love and be loved." The fairy smiled and said, "That's wonderful, my dear. You have a kind heart and a pure soul. You are worthy of love and happiness." Ella smiled back and said, "Thank you, fairy. You are very kind too. You have made my dreams come true." The fairy said, "You're welcome, my dear. But remember, you still have 1 more wish left. What do you want?" Ella thought for a while and said, "I want to go back home. I want to see my family and friends. I want to share my stories and experiences with them. I want to tell them how much I love them." The fairy said, "That is your 3rd and final wish. Are you sure you want to leave this land of fairy tales?" Ella said, "Yes, I am sure. I have seen enough. I have learned a lot. I have had fun. But I also miss my home. I miss my real life. I miss the people who care for me." The fairy said, "Very well, my dear. I respect your choice. Hold my hand and close your eyes. We will go back to your world." Ella did as she was told and felt a gust of wind blow around her. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in her room. She saw her book on the floor and her fairy on the bookshelf. The fairy said, "Goodbye, Ella. It was a pleasure to meet you and grant your wishes. I hope you enjoyed your adventure and learned something valuable. Remember, you are a special girl with a bright future. Always follow your heart and never stop dreaming." Ella said, "Goodbye, fairy. Thank you for everything. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I will always remember you and your words." The The fairy smiled and waved her wand. She disappeared in a flash of light. Ella felt a warm feeling in her chest. She picked up her book and hugged it. She looked out of the window and saw the sun rising. She smiled and said to herself, "This was the best day of my life. This was the best fairy tale ever." The moral of the story is that we should not judge a book by its cover, or a person by their appearance. We should not be deceived by the false glamour or happiness of others. We should not be envious or hateful of those who have more or less than us. We should be grateful for what we have and who we are. We should be kind and generous to others and ourselves. We should love and be loved. We should realize that our real life is more precious and beautiful than any fairy tale. We should make our own stories and make them come true. Thanks for watching the video. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment.